for this really very special start of the Heritage Open Day Festival for the town. We're delighted to be part of this for a number of years now. We're really delighted to welcome you this afternoon. Our offering is in different parts. We have a talk in just a moment. I'll say more about that. We have some tours up the tower. If you'd like to go, you're really welcome, and experience the chambers on the way up, as well as the view from the very top. We also have a pop-up cafe with refreshments served, features around the building to have a look at, including the Puget window at the far east end, and various other things that may catch your interest. Table for pamphlets and booklets explaining something of what you can see here on the table. And you may be aware around the town that we're looking to do a little project to help to repair the tower and make things good up there, as well as expand our offering to the town. And there are some questionnaires, surveys that you can do if you'd like to do that. A number of different things that are here for us this afternoon. But without more ado, I want to say that we're celebrating over 20 years of this extraordinary construction within the building. It's a fantastic church to come to lead, and a really amazing building and part of a building to be able to use and use effectively. The family firm behind it was the German family, and our speaker for today to tell us all about it is Philip German. Will you please give him a very warm welcome?
Thank you. Does that work? Jolly good. Thank you ever so much for coming to hear me. I hope it's not too boring. I am Philip German, and I was a builder. My family were builders in Peterborough in the 1820s, and in the middle of that century, they came to Farnham and started a building company there here. The firm I was part of was F.W. German & Sons, founded by Frank, my dad, and then run by my elder brother Tim, Linda, my wife, and me. We had a great team of workmen, including some talented craftsmen. There are some family links with St Andrews going back over 100 years. That's my dad's holy baptism certificate. And if I make this thing work. What's quite interesting is you can see the church here, and you can see what is the shops now, and they are little houses. I thought that was interesting. And then in 1939, they got married here. They got the same certificate. Another link. The pews in St James's Chapel over here came from St James's Church in East Street, which was deconsecrated. And my Uncle Alf, who was a teacher, was also a talented carpenter. He made them. And they got salvaged and put there. I trained as a charter surveyor in London, and in 1981 I moved to join the family firm. When I joined the firm, we were general builders working locally on mainly domestic projects. We started to get involved in old buildings and did a lot of work for the Farnham Trust. For Tanyard Cottage, part of Farnham's Tudor heritage, there it is, we and architect Stedman and Blower received the Times Conservation Award. And in 1996, just before we started work on the church, we did the Victoria Gardens, which is the old swimming pool, which is a lovely job to do. Unfortunately, the beautiful gravel paths have been tarmacked. I noticed that last week. Never mind. With projects on Farnham Castle and some impressive country housework, we developed a reputation as heritage builders. My brother and I were at the time quite young, and we used to go to the pub a lot. So we naturally got a few pub jobs, and we got some hotel work. We worked for Friary Mukes, Gales of Horndean, Taylor Walker, travelling to pubs in London, Portsmouth and locally. Our most notable pub was the Bull and Bush, the one in the song, down at the old Bull and Bush, which we refurbished in 16 weeks. The pub work requires lots of bespoke joinery, so we started a joinery shop in Blacknest, which is between Alton and Farnham. With the ability to make complicated joinery and our general building capabilities, we started to get the odd church job. There are lots of similarities between pubs and churches. I'm sure you can think of some. Tim and I noticed that we spent most of our 30s in pubs and most of our 40s and 50s in churches, which I suppose is a natural progression. One of the recurring jobs in churches is installing toilets and the associated drainage, which most old churches were without. Going out behind a gravestone was not popular with the ladies, so there were lots of building opportunities. Notably, we installed facilities in Holy Trinity Church at the top of Guildford High Street, and we built an impressive mahogany organ loft in St Giles Church in Reading for acclaimed architect Roderick Gradage. In 1996, we carried out a major refurbishment of St Peter's Parish Church in Petersfield. This included toilets, a kitchen, a new floor, and extensive custom joinery. At the reopening, the bishop came to reconsecrate the church. The church was packed, and the bishop had to knock on the door, and I had the honour of opening the door and letting him in. Unfamiliar with the radio mic he was wearing, the congregation were treated to the bishop's pre-knock chat with the choir, asking if his hat was straight. A Vicar of Dibley moment. St Peter's was closed for over a year. It was well received, and I think probably has something to do with us getting the work at St Andrews. So our first involvement here was to install concrete pad stones in the tower to enable the bell frames to be lowered. The swinging of the bells made the tower sway, and lowering the bells reduced the effect. We took out areas of internal stonework and put in pad stones. And surprisingly, we took out stones, big stones, and the back faces were carved, even down to having faces carved on them. And we think they were probably taken from a church somewhere else, or perhaps it might have been from Waverley Abbey or somewhere like that. Anyway, they were second-hand. That was quite interesting. As well as lowering the bell frames, they added 2 extra tenor bells. The bell ringers, we did the pad stones, and the bell ringers, who were basically weren't builders, did all the bell frames and hung the bells, which we were really impressed with. If you go into the ringing chamber now, when the bells are ringing, you can still feel the tower sway, which is quite worrying. There's some more of the bells. That's the top above, that's the old bell frame there. And there's proof that we were there. I didn't do that, it was one of my chaps. The next thing we had to do was to move the reredos. That thing there is that thing over there. You see the... So we basically had to pick it up, adapt it, and move it over there and refix it. This was the beginning of the reordering of the church, and they were trying to open it all up because you couldn't see beyond that. It was across here. You couldn't see from here into the far part of the church, which is quite common, and still is in quite a lot of churches. So when we were doing that, we had to move some of these memorials, and they were really heavy. We didn't know how they were fixed. We'd never done it before. And they're actually fixed. They've got stone dowels slotted in the back of them. You just slot it up and hold it up with some cement and hold it on. There's no screws, no rule plugs in those days. The reredos, that thing, was designed by an architect called David Nye in 1959. And his practice still exists. And when I was a young quantity surveyor, I worked with him. It's quite a small world. Time passed, and we were invited to tender for the reordering works designed by the new architect in charge of the building, Ptolemy Dean. This is from his website. Tolomidine Architects specialises in conservation work to historic buildings, additions to historic buildings and the design of new buildings in sensitive locations. Tolomidine will be known to some as the Historic Buildings Advisor on the BBC Two Restoration Series. He serves on the National Trust Architectural Panel and the Salisbury Cathedral Fabric Advisory Committee. From 2012, he became a surveyor of the fabric of Westminster Abbey. So you see, we've got a top bloke. Charisma and enthusiasm exuded from Ptolemy. His design was exciting and radical. He was also extremely polite, charming, and he charmed everyone, the parishioners and the builders. His design removed all the Victorian pews to give a broad, open area for flexible worship. This is quite interesting. This is the church in 1899, and you can see there's no reredos there. There's the pulpit. There's the font and the pulpit. But little else has changed. Anyway, we took out all of these pews, and underneath the pews, there was a timber floor. We took the timber floor out and dug that out and reconcreted it. We used concrete planks so we didn't disturb too much of what was underneath it. We thought we might find some treasure underneath all these old floors, but the Victorians had done such a good job of doing all this stuff. All we found were a few bones and some old tombs. And the rector came along, Andrew Tuck came along, and we dug a hole, put the bones in them and said a little prayer and covered them up and left them to rest. The new pavilions built within the fabric of the building touch the old building, but they didn't require any demolition or alteration to the historic fabric. So they are independent. We could take them away and you wouldn't know they were there. Inside the pavilions, there's a kitchen, a servery area, and a quiet room. The balcony gives extra seating and a special view of proceedings within the church. I don't want that picture yet. New glazed doors at the west end and the porch let in the light. New ramps make the space accessible to all mobility groups, and of course, there's a new toilet. It wasn't to everyone's taste, and we did get occasional flack from visitors asking where the wonderful old pews were. I've heard the pavilions called sheds, and recently I heard them called a porter cabin, but I prefer a definition I found, which is a pavilion, a light ornamental building for players and distinguished guests. Well, very romantic and nice. I remember the packed church where Reverend Andrew Tuck introduced Ptolemy to talk about the project. His vision and charm won the day. So before the Victorians, the church would have box pews. These may have had doors, roofs, and even an upstairs. They were buildings in their own right. And the more important you were, the more fancy your box pew were. And over here somewhere, we found the remnants of a stove and a chimney going out of one, so some of them even had their own heating. Anyway, we put our tender in, and we were successful. And we started work on a rainy day in 2002. We removed the pews and the timber suspended floors. Some of the pews were sold and some were dismantled. So those cupboards of old pews, it's in the back of the church, and likewise the other side. The floors and the stairs, they're old pews. The steps up and the bookcases used oak from the old pews. So we hardly had any left. Some were sold, but none was wasted. The walkway between the pews is existing. So this bit here was there already, but we had to redo this and all the top in Yorkstone, which we had to get from salvage yards. So I went up to Manchester to source this stone. We had to be really careful because in a previous job we built a very nice orangery, and every time the client watered their oranges, it smelled of lamb chops because the stone had come out of a wool mill and it was lanolin in the stone. So we had to be really careful about which stone we had. I seem to remember there's some really big ones up there. I can remember how heavy they were. Where am I now? So we found evidence of the old central tower foundations. And if you look down here, you can see a course of red bricks, which is the mark where the foundations were. And when we dug them up, all the area around there was orange because it had been burnt down. So there was a tower here. You can see the four corners are 1, 2, 3, 4. So the main church tower went up through here. That's 14th century, it was burnt down. The timber for the pavilions is pine from Northern Europe and Russia, where the colder temperatures make for slower growing and more durable timber. Unfortunately, the Russian timber, we used to find bullets in it. I don't know why they used trees for target practice up there, but it used to wreck our joinery machines. The glass doors here are extremely heavy, and each door has got 4 great big brass hinges and very long screws. We didn't actually know it was going to work until we actually did it, until we actually hung them. The glass balustrade above is fixed on powder-coated steel balusters. We made it all out of plywood first, and then sent it to the glass man who manufactured it all. It was new technology 20 years ago. It's quite commonplace now. When the sun shines in the morning, the sun comes in through that window, and I think you see it where my thing is. There's the window, and that's the reflection of the stained glass window below it. It's even better from the West End, because that's not a window, that's just a reflection, which I think is quite spooky. And I don't know if Ptolemy designed it on purpose or whether it was just an accident. I will actually ask him. We put the pavilion roof timbers on. It was only when we came to wiring the lights that we realised the joist spacing didn't suit the lights. So we had to take it all down again and do it again. The balcony is designed for 50 people maximum. But on Remembrance Day a few years ago, I probably had all of Farnham Scouts up there. So we had to paint this place, and the task included scaffolding the whole area in bits. We had a full platform just below the wall plates. And if you can imagine it, but the scaffold went across here, and when you were walking around up in this bit up here, it was like walking around a village hall. It's deceptive, but it is really big, really enormous. And I was up in the chancel ceiling, up here, one day with Ptolemy, and the edges, they all go back round. You can't see it all from down here. And I said, do we need to paint that, Ptolemy? Because no one will see it. We can save some money. He said, the Lord will see it. So we painted it. So we were surprised. I think Andrew Tuck was surprised as well when Ptolemy told us that the ceiling up here was going to be blue. We thought it was all going to be white, and he just came along there and said, no, look, we're going to paint that blue, Philip. Lovely, isn't it? Really nice. So we had a wedding here when all this whole front edge was scaffolded, and the people really wanted a wedding here, and they'd booked it ages before. So we made a tunnel underneath the scaffolding out of tarpaulins and builders' lights, and they processed round up here to get to the altar here. It was a little bit embarrassing, but I think they had a lovely day. So we used two types of traditional wall paint. The outside paint walls are painted with lime wash, which is basically lime in water. And it is like painting with water. You paint the first three coats and you can't see anything. After sort of 4 or 5 coats, the colour comes into that, you can actually see it. And the lime actually carbonates and becomes part of the wall stone. The good thing about it is it's good for damp. The damp just comes straight through it, so it doesn't peel off, but it does rub off on your clothes. The inside walls, these and the columns, are distempered, and that is lime wash with glue added. That's not so good. It chips when you put blue tack on it, David, wherever he is, and it doesn't hold back the damp, but it doesn't rub off on your clothes, and it costs a bit more. All the roof timbers were washed down, and many spiders made homeless. We had to increase our painting crew, and my son George, who's now a head teacher, and a really nice West Indian chap called Leroy did most of the lime washing. Leroy sang all day long. He was so tall, we saved money on scaffolding. We like that. So the hatchments, the hatchments are these things here on the wall. These diamond-shaped chaps. We had to take them all down. I expect you know, but what they are is when someone important died, they would have a hatchment done and hung outside their house, and then after a period of time, they would come and be put in the church. The Germans called them the shield of the dead. That's not German the builders, the German the people. They're the shields of the dead. Anyway, we took them all down, cleaned them off, and hung them up again. That's really uncomfortable. I think you're supposed to have a balaclava underneath it, but everyone tried it on it. It's hanging on the wall over here. Someone's helmet. So it's an Andrew up here. You see him up there? I'm not sure where he came from. I think he came from one of the satellite churches. But I had to carry him up there on a long ladder on my shoulder. He is very heavy. I just hope he doesn't decide to come down one day. So the downside of having a kitchen in the middle of the church was that the plumbing and the drains are right over there, and the kitchen's over there. So the drains come down here. They're pumped, and if you hear a gurgling, it's not your neighbour, it's the drains. We put a new toilet in the vestry with a sewage pump which pumps the poo up into the ceiling, across and down. So the largest church in Surrey now has 2 loos. So my plumber, Nobby Haytree, which some of you may remember, great chap, he was sitting in this trench and I introduced him to Ptolemy. He said, "Ptolemy, what sort of name's that then?" And Ptolemy said, "It's Greek." Nobby was working into his 90s and only passed away last year. Great chap. One of the issues of the church is rising damp. And we put a trench all the way around the outside. It's got a pipe in the bottom of it and filled up with stones. I think it's largely worked. There's still some damp signs around here, but we were worried that people were going to pick the stones up and chuck them through the window, but that hasn't happened, to my knowledge. The main porch on the north of the building originally had steps and a threshold, so you couldn't get in with a wheelchair. But it did stop the water, which the water comes down the footpaths and rushed to the porch and would come in. But we put these enormous drains out there. If you look out there, you can see those grills are great big drains. Hopefully that keeps the water out, and now you can get right in with a wheelchair. And as I said before, all the steps and the ramps were made out of old pews. We moved the pulpit 3 times. Well, I think probably twice actually. It can only go that side of a column. So I think it was here. So we moved it to there, didn't like that, and moved it back there. And that's where it stayed. It's very heavy. The ancient font, there's the pulpit. The ancient font was here, as you saw in the picture, and we moved it over here. And it's got no drain. The water just trickles down and dampens the floor. It's holy water, so it's okay. Nearing completion, we came to paint St. James's Chapel ceiling, which is in here. And it was really rotten. No one had noticed. And we had to take most of it down. And you can see that a lot of it's gold leaf, all those bosses, we had to remake some of those, and lots of gold leafing. And we had a really good decorator, a guy called Jim Dory, who's no longer with us. And he was excellent at that. He also, I couldn't resist this one. He also did that. I stole that from the Farnham Society, sorry. It was on their thing. But he also did that. That was in my garage. That's above the town hall buildings. That was in my garage for about a month while he did it. And it's actually about this tall. So that was 40 years ago. That was gold leaf, so that's not bad. Right. I'm not ready for that one, sorry, go back. The new altar here, the font and the lectern were all designed by Ptolemy, and this is pew wood. That's just pine that's painted. And I notice it needs repainting, it's got a chip on it, so I remind them to do that. So the work inside this building took the best part of 2 years, and the church was open all of the time. We worked in every nook and cranny. But it didn't stop there. Time passed, and they needed a new roof to the tower. And to get to the tower, you had to climb up that horrible ladder and push up a hatch, which was bolted, and clamber out. It was not good. And that's the copper roof, the old copper roof. You see the patches on it. So we had to strip that all off. So the inside of the tower was, of course, home to Farnham's pigeon population. And all these old stairs and the like were covered in guano. So we had to clean all that up. This is all gone now. And this is the old bell frame. And you can see there's a flagpole. And I don't know what that's all about. I can't see there it may have been the original, perhaps someone fixed it there just because it's probably on the roof at one stage. So it's probably very old. I still don't know really why that's there. So if you go into the tower, you can see, if you look up, you can see there are hatches. And you can take the hatches out, and that above there is the bell ringers, and then above there is the clock tower, is the clock room. So we took that out, and we put a big hoist in, and we replaced the roof. So that ladder was 30 foot. And I've done all that, good. So my chaps had to climb 300 steps, 115 foot, 35 metres, every time they wanted a wee. I don't know whether they did or not. Anyway, we stripped off the copper roof and repaired the roof. We built a new access canopy. There it is. The highest shed in Farnham. And that comes onto a galvanised stair. The roof is covered in code 5 lead, sorry. The lead work was done again by my plumber, Nobby, and his son, Graham. And they had the full range of plumbing skills. So they could do pipes and they could do lead work. So it comes from plumber, which is the French for lead. So that's where it comes from. I don't think many plumbers could do that today. It's a special. Roofers do that now. And it's all topped with a new flagpole. There we are. And then you get some great views. If you do get a chance to go up there, it is fabulous. You really get to see the town and the enormous roof above us here. Lower down, we made all the floors safe, filling in the holes and fixing loose boards. And then we made the skinniest wooden staircase, a spiral and a straight bit. There were no drawings. We just took my joinery foreman, Alan, up there and said, can you make a staircase for this? Can you make it fit? It's really hard to take pictures of it because it's so small. It's so small. You can actually see the clock as well, which again is an outstanding thing. I think it's 1400 or something like that. I don't know. Roy will tell you if you go up there. That's the clock chamber. You can just see the staircase creeping up in the corner there. You need to be quite thin. I'm all right. There you go. And then it's finished off with a spiral staircase up to the roof, which was also, but that was put together in Recklesham. All local stuff. Anyway, the whole tower project cost £84,115. Unfortunately, the tower is now in need of structural repair, and currently the bells are only heard courtesy of electronic hammers rather than bell ringers on ropes. So as David said, look out for the tower project, now launched, looking for a large sum of money to save the tower and make the building more accessible. The next project we were involved with was graves. That's William Cobbett's grave, and it's actually been refurbished since we did it, so it's been done twice. This is another funny story. Outside the vestry door, on your picture, there's the vestry, there's a path, the cobble paving, and one morning a hole opened up in it, and it turned out to be a tomb. And so I went and had a look at it, and I was leaning over it, looking down, and my glasses fell off, and fell onto the skull, 6 foot down in the hole. And so I had to get 2 pieces of stick and get them out. Anyway, we mended the hole, and now whoever it is down there is resting in peace. Our final involvement was in connection with the refurbished organ. Over here, providing the screen and working in connection with the organ builders. The insides of a church organ are an amazing array of metal and wooden pipes, dust and cobwebs. The organ builder is a magician. He makes wonderful sounds come out of base materials. It's amazing. Our organ builder wore sandals and socks. I know that's relevant, but it amused me. So I've spent a lot of time sitting and working in lovely old churches and I feel I'm very privileged to have done so. One observation I like is that on plan, churches are cruciform. So you get a cross like that, down there and up there. But the chancel, the top bit, in some churches, is slightly out of line with the nave. Some say this depicts Jesus' head drooping to the left as he hung on the cross. You can see that in St. Andrew's. The chancel weeps. So I was running FW German for 30 years, and we did some great jobs. We had some wonderful craftsmen. But this is the one. Thank you. How long does that take? Anyone ask any questions? Oh, good.
I'd like to ask a question. I'm of the camp that think that the reordering has been a real success and wonderful to make a building flexible in these times of change when we do need buildings to meet the needs. So that is fantastic. What I would just like to ask about is the tower at the moment, which is parting company from itself in vertically.
Yeah.
You've got some vertical cracks going down there. And when you look at really old buildings, you notice that they like to brace their buildings using buttress plates and then clamp it back together. Because I don't know how it's going to be dealt with, these vertical stones, whether the whole thing has to be dismantled or whether or not it can be just clamped back together using clever buttress plates with perhaps some really nice designs.
So the answer is I don't know. I understand that the structure of the tower is sound and it's just the cladding that is loose. But I haven't been involved in that at all. I see what you're saying, yeah. So I don't know. Sorry.
And one further question, how much did the reordering cost? Can you remember
It was over $1 million. It was 1.2 or something like that. Very cheap. Good value, I think.
I was a choir boy here back in the early 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Cook was the choir master then, and Henry H.R. Wiles was the rector. We had wooden pews in those days. So what did they do with the pews? Any idea?
What do they do with them?
Yeah, what did they do away with them? I only said they were used for certain things there.
So the idea was to make the space accessible, so they can actually use this. They can actually move all the chairs back. So what I didn't actually say is, if you go back before the box pews that I was talking about, go before the Victorians, before the sort of Georgian box pews, the whole church would have been open, and it would probably have been used for all sorts of things, markets and things like that, even some. So it's going back to that, but it's basically so it's much more versatile. So they can actually change the church around and have the worship in the middle, and they can do all sorts of things. So that's what that is. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. If you get a chance to go up the tower, please do. It's really worth it.
It's not dangerous.
So 25 years ago, I used to run up and down there. I went up there last week, and it was actually quite hard work. But yeah, no, it's okay. It's well worth a visit. Thank you very much. Thank you.